Okay, so we're here at Fulton Ferry Landing, stop 1 in the Dumbo section of the In Pursuit of Freedom map.
Right.
And this is a very different scene from what you would have seen back in the 17 and 1800s.
Very different in many ways. Also, not that different in maybe just one way where it still is a dock.
That's right. Those
and
two
there
bridges
still are boats.
would not have been there.
The bridges wouldn't have been
and
there.
The main way to get from across the water over there in Manhattan to here in Brooklyn was through Fulton Ferry.
Right.
So all the way from when Brooklyn was just a village up till when it became a city, coming back and forth from this point was the way that you commuted. And you're right. It does. There are aspects to this that still feel, very much like a dock and a place of marine transport.
Right. But the modern infrastructure, like you called out, of course, the bridges, the types of boats, definitely. Even the feeling of fanciness that this dock has right now is only about 10 years old, so it definitely wasn't like this hundreds of years ago. The buildings across the way, some of those are brand new as well. So definitely the whole modern energy clearly wasn't here. But
and I believe, is that the modern ferry system, or is it just a boat that looks like the ferry?
I think that is the ferry.
I was going to call it out as definitively the ferry, but then I got a little confused.
It says something on the front that I can't quite read.
Yeah.
It definitely looks like the ferries that are used these days. Whatever. It either is or it isn't.
Either way, that's the ferry stop right there. So they are trying to make an effort to revive the system over the past few years. Yeah,
although this is kind of an aside, but we're here. The ferries have not been used very much during COVID, and they've been considering how are they going to manage the budget of the whole public transportation, and one of the options is to discontinue ferry service for a while, or to make it less.
That is definitely a topic on the mayoral candidates are all weighing in on.
Yeah.
But you can see right now it's definitely much more of a destination for both tourists and for people that are, locals and just want to do something on the weekend or spend a nice time. Lots of ice cream shops around. There's a Shake Shack across the way. And, at the time of that the In Pursuit of Freedom module covers, from the, late 1700s up to the mid 1800s, this was a very different space in terms of it being residential and industrial shipping and things like that.
Right.
Say Luke's lobster roll over here. Now, in this area of the tour in particular, there are not a lot of existing structures that are around today. So we'll be stopping at a couple of different spots, and when we do so, we'll be taking a look at what it is now more than what it is or what it was then.
Right. Yeah, I guess in line with what we just said about that, the port area feeling so different. That's, it's all been, it seems like this whole area has been pretty knocked down and rebuilt.
Yeah, and is still being built, if you can hear the construction.
As you can probably hear.
It's a pretty loud part of Brooklyn. Between the Dumbo, between the Manhattan Bridge and the construction, helicopters going over constantly.
Yeah, even just being a lot of cobblestone streets around here.
Yeah.
Definitely, lots of noise.
But that doesn't...
Are you guys vaccinated?
Yeah.
Because I'm here to help people to get themselves.
We are 100%.
We're double vaxxed. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Okay. We haven't talked about that on the podcast, but secret's out.
Yeah.
We're double vexed now.
Yeah, as of, well, when this comes out, it'll be Tuesday.
Yeah.
And we will be like 10 days post second vax. Yeah. When this comes out. So.
Feeling good.
Feeling good. Oh God. also, earlier this week, I got hit in the head with a pigeon.
She did. And Jessie constantly complains about how the pigeons are out to get her and they don't know what they're doing, and I'm usually defending the pigeons, but I gotta say, it really just flew right into her head.
It just flew straight into my head from behind.
Yeah.
Which I think was better, because when it's flying in front of me, I freak out.
Yeah.
But it just flew, just grazed the top of my head from behind and landed in front. It was one of the pigeons that's like brown and white.
Yeah, it was a fairly nice looking pigeon, I'd say. On the scale of pigeon attractiveness, it was a fairly unusual one.
Yeah. I didn't think it realized it hit me.
Yeah.
But anyway.
We're under the Brooklyn Bridge now. And we're turning onto Front Street, I believe. Yes, Front Street. And there's a couple different excerpts from the program we're going to read off. Jessie's going to read them while I navigate with the camera.
Yes.
Let's see more construction here. But there are two sections Jessie's going to read off of, and that's Mr. Mills Tavern and the home of Henry C. Thompson.
Right. So, Mr. Mills Tavern, which was on Main and Front Streets, which is just up ahead, says, "Picture nothing here but wood-framed houses, taverns, and shops. Main Street once extended all the way up the hill to Old Fulton Street, but many buildings were demolished during the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge, which began in 1870. This parking lot, which
is not even a parking lot
anymore. It's becoming Olympia Dumbo. But this Olympia Dumbo was the location of Mills Tavern. In 1818, it was the starting place for a procession organized by the Brooklyn African Woolman Benevolent Society, which was a group of free black Brooklynites who came together to assist one another. They took the Woolman name in honor of Quaker abolitionist John Woolman. The march ended at the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which was Brooklyn's first African-American denomination in downtown Brooklyn."
Yeah, and the Woolman Society is something that will come up a couple other times while we walk through here. And I had not heard of him before. I looked him up, and he's a pretty interesting character, a Quaker that lived from like 1712 to right before the Revolutionary War.
Right.
And he really was principled in that he didn't think that slavery should exist, and kind of managed to persuade a bunch of people, based on the descriptions that I read about him, that it was inappropriate, and ended up dying over in England of smallpox when he was touring, about speaking out against slavery.
Oh no. I think they referenced him in the play that was put on at Irondale as part of this project, which we'll link to, and maybe we'll talk about it again later.
Yeah.
So the other location that was right around here is Henry C. Thompson's shoe and boot blacking business.
Yeah.
And the description says, south of this corner was Henry C. Thompson's boot blacking business. Thompson was an African-American businessman with a busy shoe shine and repair shop. Most people during this period only owned 1 or 2 pairs of shoes. They would have relied on Thompson's crucial business to repair their shoes until they were totally worn out. As an activist, Thompson was a member of the Brooklyn African Woolman Benevolent Society, which we just spoke about, and later became an early investor in Weeksville, which was the African American community founded in 1838 in what is now Crown Heights.
That's right. Weeksville is a bit further east of where we'll be walking around right now, but it comes up a bunch of times, and it's a really cool spot. We're going to check it out a little bit later.
Yeah, and just I think a quick and easy description of what Weeksville was at the time was a community, kind of like its own village or its own town.
Yep.
That was specifically for free African American people.
That's right.
And it allowed them to have homes and businesses and support one another, just like the rest of, Brooklyn was doing themselves, but it allowed for the African American community to actually have some sort of voting rights and property and all the things that people want in society.
That's right. It was the largest urban community of African Americans pre-Civil War.
Yeah.
And as Jesse referenced, once in New York City they made it so that, or in New York State, so that you had to own land, $250 worth, in order to vote. This enabled the opportunity for free African American men to vote at that time.
Yeah, and just one more note about that before we move back to where we currently are.
Yeah.
That was a community that was founded by African American people.
Right.
It wasn't something that was like set up by the government at the time.
That's right.
It was a community led and run town.
Yeah. And Henry was one of those founders. There's a couple of others that we'll come across as we're walking around. So now we're going to go to the home of the Kroger brothers, Peter and Benjamin. They had homes on Pearl Street, which is under the very noisy Manhattan Bridge. Maybe if we're lucky, we'll skip in between trains.
Hope so.
Oh, we should pop down here just for a second. If I am recalling my geography correctly, this is the little secret alleyway that goes under the Manhattan Bridge that Jesse and I really like.
There's rarely anyone in here.
Yeah.
And it really feels like it's this secret little spot that not many people know about.
On the episode where we talked about getting engaged, I mentioned that there was another spot that I was considering proposing, and that was another spot that I considered proposing.
Oh, that would be cute too.
Yeah. We picked the spot that was right.
No, the spot that was, I could hear you at the spot that you ended up picking. You might have brought me here and I'd be like, what?
Why are you walking so slowly?
What are you doing down
there? What are you waiting for? All right. So we're on Pearl Street now. You can see why it's an attraction to come down here too. It feels fun and different from the rest of the city.
I think there's even like a clown store or something.
Clown store?
I think so. Like some kind of like party store or something.
So I think actually where they lived is right up ahead there, but maybe we'll stick out here for a minute to read about them once the trains pass. All right, you want to read for us?
Yes. So this would have been Peter and Benjamin Kroger's home, or homes. It says, before the Jehovah's Witnesses built these 20th century factories to house their printing presses, this area was residential. Peter Kroger moved here from James Street sometime after 1820. He and his family lived only 2 doors away from his brother Benjamin Kroger. The Kroger brothers were listed in city directories as cleric, preacher, and class leader, and they were among the pillars of the African American community.
Yeah, so they had their hands in a lot of foundational organizations that we'll be discussing. And I'll probably, say this again, but it's a really amazing job accumulating all of these names. It's a really great job that was done in this program, accumulating all the names of people that were important this time during the abolition movement. Because it's not about celebrity people that stand the test of time in history books. They end up becoming the touchstones that allow us to condense history into smaller, more digestible pieces. But it really takes an entire community to make a movement happen.
I listened to an interview with one of the people, I believe it was one of the people from the Brooklyn Historical Society that was working on this project, one of the researchers, and she was saying that, if memory serves correctly, I believe it took a number of years to do all the research for this project. And she was saying that in that research, they amassed like hundreds, if not thousands, of names or characters.
Right.
And a lot of them would only show up once or twice, as opposed to what you're saying. Like, we often hear in history books about like one person who we have a whole story for. But I think what's really cool about this project, or one of the things that's really cool about this project, is that they've listed all these little stories. Like,
right.
things that way. I think because it's much more relatable to hear about, say, 25 people that each did one small part to make a large thing happen, as opposed to hearing about one person that did a huge thing. Like, it almost feels like inspiring for future generations to work together.
Yeah, I agree. So we're coming up on our last stop on the Dumbo section here, and this is Sand Street. Sand Street is named after a pair of brothers that were instrumental in forming this area in terms of real estate.
Right.
And showcases another great aspect of this project, which is it's not just about the people that are on the right side of history, it's also about the people that were in conflict with the abolitionist movement, either explicitly or implicitly through how they lived their life.
Right, which I also think is contradictory, maybe is the right word, to how we normally learn about history, especially here, where we're usually just celebrating the things that we want to be proud of. I think it is really important to also not celebrate, but be aware of the people that were doing things in history that weren't positive.
Yeah, so let's read about the Sands brothers.
Yeah, so Sands Street.
Yeah.
In 1784, brothers Comfort and Joshua Sands bought 160 acres along the Brooklyn waterfront for $12,000. As a result, the Sands family once owned most of Dumbo and Vinegar Hill area. Joshua Sands was a congressman and president of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Brooklyn. He also owned a rope walk where he manufactured shipping, rigging, and various kinds of rope. His brother Comfort was a founder and director of the Bank of New York and president of the New York Chamber of Commerce. In this area, which is now a barren entryway to two bridges, once stood homes and shops. Sands Street was an important thoroughfare between the town of Brooklyn and the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which was established by the federal government in 1801. Now it runs through the neighborhood of Vinegar Hill, which is named after a battlefield in Ireland. It was named by the Irish immigrants who settled here after 1820. Early Brooklynites included people of Dutch, German, English, French, Scandinavian, Belgian, Irish, and African descent.
Yeah. So that's it for this section. There is one other thing I'm going to call out now, which is the Sands Street Methodist Church, which we will hear about in another section. It's pretty controversial in how it decided to treat its congregants. But we will get to that as we now move into the downtown Brooklyn section of the walk.